Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the next edition of the Thursday webinars. This evening, it will be on gift aid and the opportunities and pitfalls for community amateur sports clubs and charities. And for the main, will be led by Richard Baldwin, our consultant and expert in this arena. Just to say hi, I am Dave Stubley, RFU's Club Management and Volunteer Manager. And in the background tonight, you'll also have Alex Thompson, the Club Services Manager. We're just going to wait for a few people to come in, so I'm just going to go around a few slides just to make sure everybody can hear and can see correctly. You should be able to hear me. If you can't, check your connection. And for those that maybe can hear me but can't see me, it may be you want to jump in and jump out again. This evening, we will be using the chat function. Please use it. Put your name, your club, your role, either putting forward any questions or any queries or any thought where you've made good use of this particular area. Obviously, we'll aim to try and answer maybe a couple of questions this evening, but as in previous webinars, we will take the questions away, answer them, and come back to you in due course. So please make use of the chat function as we go through this evening. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, try another web browser. What we have found so far that Chrome tends to work best, but yeah, please have a look at that if need be. And to get the most out of this evening, please try and minimize distractions, turn off your phone, go on silent, close any other applications. That will obviously help you make the best use of this evening's webinar. Also, please do note that if you are watching the screen in full screen, you may not see some of the polls, but Alex will dip in and tell you when that is the case. So you might need to close it down occasionally, and also to make use of the chat function. Again, moving on, just going to go around again as some people are coming in. This evening's webinar is gift aid, opportunities and pitfalls for the community amateur sports clubs and charities, and it's led by our consultant Richard Baldwin, who's an expert in this field, ex-Deloitte's partner, and has been involved in CASC since it was started. You should be able to hear me. If you can't, please do check your connection, use the chat function, and obviously, if need be, log in and log out again. But you should be able to hear me, and you should be able to see me. As I said earlier, please, we'll make great use of the chat function tonight. So if you use it, please put your name, your club, your role, any questions that you may have as we go through. Obviously, what we'll aim to do is any questions we can't answer this evening or not answered in the webinar, we'll come back to you in due course. The whole of the webinar is recorded and will be sent out of you to review in due course. And also, what we'll also do is make sure everybody who's registered will also get a copy of the questions and, more importantly, the answers. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please try using another web browser. We tend to find that Chrome works best, but that's just to keep us moving forward. Again, in terms of making the best use of the time this evening, please have a look at minimizing distractions, turn off phones, close applications. The idea of this evening is we'll be finished again just before 8 so that we can go outside and clap our NHS workers. That is the time frame for this evening. Again, for those just coming in, the webinar this evening is on making use of gift aid, its opportunities and the pitfalls for community amateur sports clubs and charities. And it's being led by Richard Baldwin, who will be kicking off very shortly. So thank you. Hopefully most people are now who I wish to be are now on and can hear me and see me. Just before we click over to Richard, please just go through housekeeping. Yes, it's a webinar, and obviously we've had a huge increase in the amount of internet usage since we've all gone into lockdown. So there's over a 70% increase of people using the internet. So there may be a few technical problems. Please either log in, log out tends to be the one, the most technical one I've come across, but make use of that. But please make use of the chat function. Please, any and all questions, use them in the chat function. We will try to ensure that we've got answers back to you afterwards. There is also, you will have access to a resources section, which you can see some of the information that we put up there. Again, you'll have that to take away. Have a look at that in due course. As I've mentioned earlier, this whole session will be recorded, and you will get a copy of the recording following the event, and actually be able to share it and ask others to sign up to it if you as is appropriate. And as I mentioned, we will all aim to finish this but just before 8 o'clock, so it gives us the opportunity to go out and clap our NHS workers. Anyway, that's enough of the repetition from me. I'm going to click on the next slide, and I shall be handing over to this night's guest speaker, which is Mr. Richard Baldwin.
Good evening, everybody. Let me add my welcome to Dave's and to introduce the topics I'm going to cover with this gift aid webinar. As you can see, I'm going to start off with providing a little bit of background to the registration of CASC and charity and the benefits, but most of the time will be spent on gift aid and GADs. There we go. So, as you may or may not be aware, registration to access cash benefits, if you're a club, is available if you're a community amateur sports club, which means that you just register with the revenue under a reasonably light touch scheme, or with the Charity Commission first, and then with the Inland Revenue as a charity. Those are the two routes that we are talking about this evening. So over to you, Alex, for the poll.
Thank you, Richard. Just going to check and stuff. So I'm just going to launch the first poll. We've got quite a few polls this evening, so we've got a bit like a quiz. So I'm just going to launch that first poll now. That should be with you. If you are in full screen, you will need to come out of that to see the poll and take part in it. But is your club a CASC? Is it a charity? Neither of those, or you don't know. Remember, if you're full screen, you'll have to come out. So I'm just going to gather those results, give you that last few seconds to put them in, and then I will publish them for everyone to see. So what it looks like is 68% of you are CASCs, 15% are charity, and 17% are neither. So I'm just going to pass you back to Richard. I've published those results. You will have to cross it off yourself to take it off the screen, but you should see those in front of you now. Over to Richard.
Thanks very much, Alex. That's an interesting result. So it seems as though I'm predominantly talking to CASC, but there are some charities, and there's a few of you that maybe should be considering whether you should register under either route. Anyway, on to the important part at the beginning of this presentation, which is what are the cash benefits? And I'm going to kick off with the CASC route first. The first major benefit which attracts the scheme to many clubs is 80% mandatory business rate relief. Now, I hear you say that's going to be of no use to me for the next year. Well, that is true, because you will have business rates holiday under the Chancellor's very generous announcement. But believe me, business rates will come back after that. So 80% business rate relief is a valuable benefit. The subject of our presentation this evening is gift aid and the ability to get tax refunds from the Exchequer. That's the second major benefit. The third, many may not be aware of because they don't realize they should be paying it, but there are corporation tax savings, significant savings arising if you are a CASC. And effectively, these mean that you need pay no corporation tax. One of the bigger ones of these are for grounds that clubs that are moving grounds is capital gains. The capital gain that you make on selling a ground to move is not going to be subject to tax, provided the proceeds are reinvested in your sport for sporting purposes. And finally, something which many of us don't want to think about, inheritance tax savings. Now, these are a plus for the club, since an individual that dies, a member that dies, or maybe during his lifetime, if he gives some of his estate to the club, particularly if it's a bequest on death, there will be no inheritance tax on that whatsoever. And at a 40% rate, that is quite a significant benefit to a club. So they're the cash benefits. And since most of you, I think, are probably in the CASC category, let me, before I move on to that, just remind you all about the benefits of charity. Nice smiley face there. They are similar to CASC, but they're slightly better. In practical terms, the additional tax benefits do not amount to significant sums. And I would say that probably if you're comparing the two, the major benefit is from charity is that it's a well-known brand. People know about charities. It's existed for hundreds of years. And since the turn of the century, sports clubs have been able to become charities, and many have registered. Now, for every benefit, there's a disadvantage. And on the right-hand side of that slide, you will see that there is an administrative burden. Complying with the Charity Commission's requirements, which include an annual trustees report, an independent examination of your accounts if your income is over 25,000, and possibly complying, well, almost certainly complying with accounting requirements for charities, which will not be applicable to CASCs because there are no specific accounting requirements for CASCs. So that's the charity route. And as I said, I'm probably going to concentrate in the remaining part of this introduction to deal with registration as a CASC. This is just really a brief reminder, and I'm sure will not be news to many of you, but those that haven't registered may be it may be of interest. So first off is the constitution of the club, the articles if you're a company, the rules if you're a registered society, and an ordinary constitution if you're a members club. They must be compliant with the CASC rules, and there are 4 or 5 clauses that you must have in your constitution in order for the revenue to tick you through the process. So that's a first requirement, major requirement. Secondly, you must be open to the public, and there are various pieces of guidance saying what that means, but you can't restrict entry into the club. So an exclusive club, I'm not sure this exists in rugby, but it does in a golf, in a sport, say like golf, where you just can't get into the club. Those sorts of clubs, not open to the public, will not be able to qualify. You must also be amateur, and amateur, there are various strings attached to that particular condition. One of which is payment of players, and generally, apart from relatively small payments to players, if you pay your players, you cannot be a member of the CASC scheme. Now, there are other conditions, and this was the bane of Dave and my life in 2015, when a scheme that was working quite well, the revenue didn't like it and introduced a number of other conditions, and which caused many clubs to review their situation and either come out of the scheme, or many did change their arrangements and were able to comply and stay in the scheme. Specifically for rugby clubs, I've labelled this slide rugby challenges. That perhaps it could be misinterpreted, but these are challenges potentially for rugby clubs in either registering for the scheme or, once registered, staying in the scheme. And the first of these was that in 2015 there was a formal requirement introduced in the law that 50% of your members must actively participate. And one of the issues we had with that was that most of your clubs do a fantastic job with juniors, and if you invite your parents to become members, then you might find that 2 parents who don't participate under the very strict test make meeting that test very difficult. So that's one that's still with us and needs to be monitored, not every year, but on a fairly regular basis. The second test introduced in 2015, which caused us again quite a bit of difficulty, was we've called it the non-member income limit, which in more technical terms means that your trading income and your rental income must not exceed 100,000 a year. Now, many clubs with successful bars were above that limit, and therefore in 2015 we had to put our thinking caps on and decide what we could do to keep those successful clubs in the scheme. And as a result, we came up with the idea of establishing a trading subsidiary to carry on the non-sporting bar, catering, those type of activities. And full marks to the Rugby Union. They engaged ourselves and a firm of solicitors to come up with some template documentation, which you'll find on the RFU website. I may be being a bit modest, but I think it's very good, and we know a number of clubs have used it, and that has enabled them to stay in the scheme. So, final comment on challenges for rugby clubs is one of your treasurers change, your committees change, so do the circumstances of your club change. Have a look at whether you continue to comply with those CASC conditions. The government haven't inflation linked any of the thresholds. So the 100,000 limit is now 5 years old, and it should probably be another 15 or 20,000, but it's not. It's still at 100,000. So do have a look, and if you need any help with that, we'll be delighted to provide it. So on to the next poll. This is a question we often get asked. Alex, would you like to take it?
Thanks very much. So I've just launched that poll now. Very simple one to answer very, very quickly. Is a CASC a legal status? Yes, no, or don't know. Hopefully it shouldn't take you too long. If you are in full screen, you will have to come out of it to see the poll. But hopefully that's given you enough time. I'll gather the results now. So last couple of seconds if you haven't done so and stuff. Okay. So is CASC a legal status? 50% said yes. Nearly 29% said no, and 21% said don't know. So I'm going to publish those results now, and Richard will just clarify some things around that. Richard?
Thanks very much, Alex. That's not a surprising result. I'm afraid this whole area of CASC, charity, legal status, is one that gets club treasurers in all sports confused. The answer is that CASC is not a legal status, it's a tax status. And in fact, a club can be a members club with an ordinary constitution. It can be, as I said, a company limited by guarantee or a registered society. The latter two do provide legal protection, but registration as a CASC in itself does not give you any legal protection. So if you haven't got it before you register, you won't have it after you register. But I would add this point, and I think we in the RFU have been very successful in this, that when clubs have looked to incorporate to get that legal protection, we've always encouraged them to look at registration as either a CASC or a charity. Because if you're changing your constitution, which you will do to get incorporated, then you might as well have a look at changing it for registration purposes. So tip to take home, that one is worth remembering. Let me move on now. Now this is hopefully what you've all come to listen to, and this is the gift aid section. And I start off this always with the comment that the revenue and the government would be absolutely delighted if every single rugby club was registered and used gift aid. They feel that the take-up of gift aid is not as good as it could be, which is surprising since it amounts to the government giving money away to registered sports clubs. And evidence of this was on the night of Sport Relief. I don't know whether any one of you watched it, 13th of March. The Revenue put out a press release with a great big commendation for gift aid, and they used Salisbury Rugby Club who provided a testimonial. So this was great visibility for not only gift aid but for rugby. And in fact, I sourced another 2 rugby club testimonials, which we'll talk about in a minute. And the evening of that program, in the first hour or so, if any one of you watched it, you would have seen that gift aid got mentioned 2 or 3 times by the presenters. So that was fine. It was great. Unfortunately, what came around the corner was the lockdown and the pandemic. So a lot of the, I'm sure a lot of the press was taken up with other matters, not gift aid. But here is the first principal example: Salisbury Rugby Club, community amateur sports club down in the West Country. £25,000 worth of gift aid they've raised over 4 years. This helped fund their new changing rooms, which I believe are about to be opened. They may be open at the moment. So the chairman gave us a fantastic testimonial, and which we were able to use. They were delighted. They had to raise nearly £300,000 towards the new changing rooms, and 25,000 of that was from the government, which was brilliant. It's not confined to CASC gift aid. Charities can take advantage of it as well. And we have Dorking Rugby Club, which claims to be the first rugby club to register as a charity. It has raised over 80,000 in gift aid over 10 years. That's 8,000 a year. And it's used those funds, excellent use of the funds, to increase participation and support mini and youth development rugby. Again, that press release was used in a regional press release on the 13th of March by HMRC. They were absolutely delighted with all 3 press releases, because the last testimonial was from Barnes Rugby Club, was a CASC converted to a charity, and that staggeringly 150,000 gift aid over 10 years. Again, not funding facilities, so gift aid does not have to be necessarily linked into facility improvement programs. It's helped to fund the minis, the youths, girls and ladies rugby at that rugby club. Well done to them. And I must say this: I did contact a number of clubs in a number of sports, and the best responses were from rugby. So you take a bow, Dave. So, Alex, the next poll. Let's take a rain check on this.
Okay, thanks. I've just launched that poll now. So, has your club been claiming gift aid? We know, a lot of the clubs get the benefit of the rate relief, and that's one of the main reasons. But are we actually claiming gift aid? Are we taking advantage of this? Yes, no, don't know. Let's collect them results now, and I'll gather them results in, and I will just publish them for you. Thanks very much. So I'm just going to publish them. So yes, 51% are, but no, 47% aren't. Okay. So I'm just publishing those results now. Back over to you, Richard.
Oh, brilliant. Very interesting results coming through from the polls. Well done to the 50+% that have claimed it. Doesn't surprise me that the take up is at that level. In fact, I think it's probably better than I would have thought. So you'll get a big tick from the revenue, a big pat on the back, provided you're doing it properly, of course, which I'm sure you are. The gift aid rules are not simple. Revenues guidance runs to pages and pages. I've been involved in trying to rewrite some of that guidance, but unfortunately the revenue pursue their own words and we have little influence over it. What I'm going to try and do is make it as simple as I can, recognizing that if I give you a taster, particularly for the 40-odd% that haven't taken gift aid up, it may encourage you to have a look at it and see what you can do, because in the current environment, this is really important money for you. So just to say, well, what actually qualifies? What do you have to do to take advantage of gift aid? Well, firstly, an individual taxpayer must make a donation of money, and it makes a donation to a registered club. So for those that are not registered, you need to look at registration. And I emphasize the word donation. The revenue do not like the word payment, because rather cynically, they regard payments as being associated with the provision of goods and services. And gift aid is not about the provision of goods and services, it's about straightforward voluntary donations. And there's the big X on the last line there. nothing or very little must be received in return. Now, there is extensive guidance on what is called donor benefits, which I'm not going to attempt to cover. And if you are receiving donations and want to provide something, it may be a sort of a celebratory lunch or dinner at the end of the year to your major donors, that's another matter. You need to look at that, and probably doable, but don't assume that unless you're giving nothing or very, very little in return, it's going to qualify. So that's very broadly what gift aid is. But what are the benefits? Now, hopefully the 51% on the poll that are using it will know what the benefits are and will be making great use of them. In very simple terms, if a donation is made qualifying for gift aid, then HMRC will pay the club 25% of that figure as a tax rebate. So £100 donation, if you're lucky enough to get that, £25 will be paid to HMRC. You can see the notes there. That's the proportion. And on the other side of that, if the donor is fortunate or maybe unfortunate enough to be paying high rate or additional rate tax, that's 40 or 45% in today's world, then the donor can also get a tax rebate. And on that £100, if the donor was paying tax at a 40% rate, hopefully many of your members will be, who knows, then that donor at the 40% rate payer can get £25 back from the revenue as well. Now you multiply those figures up and it's very attractive to wealthy people because the government is subsidizing donations to the club, and we would all clap our hands to that one. So this is a question I'm very often asked, and Alex, maybe you can put it and process the answers.
Yeah. So it's launched now. It should be with you. So we know that we can claim gift aid on individuals. We're used to that, doing charity runs and variety of things. Tick the gift aid at the end. But does gift aid apply to company donations? Let us know. Yes, no, don't know. Let us know what you think. So I'm just going to gather those results now. Gather those results in, and yes. Sort of 13%, but no says 64%, and we got 23% who don't know. So I'm just publishing those results for you now. Back over to you, Richard.
Yeah, this was a bit of a trick question, I'm afraid. So I think both the yeses and the no's are right. And the reason is that there is a concept of company gift aid, but it is quite different to individual gift aid. And the way that company gift aid works, there is no cash rebate, there's no 25%, but the company, and this is whether the recipient club is a charity or a CASC, can get a corporation tax deduction for the donation. Now, you might say in the current environment, it will be difficult to attract those donations, but when we get back to normal, that will be of value to companies making donations, because a £100 gift will result in £19 of corporation tax saving. 19% is the rate of corporation tax currently. Unfortunately, the government decided not to reduce it to 17%. Probably felt they couldn't afford it. But anyway, so that is the benefit that you can get from supporters of the club. If you're registered, you can say, look, there's no need to fiddle around with sponsorship and giving benefits, which maybe or may not be of value in return. If you just make a straightforward donation, you can get tax relief for it. A big plus. You get the benefit because it encourages the company supporter to give you money. And more important than anything on this slide is the last comment at the bottom, that if you use a trading subsidiary to carry on your commercial operations, your bar, catering, etc., because you're up against that 100,000 limit, or possibly because you're over the 50,000 trading exemption for CASC, then the trading subsidiary can earn all those profits and then donate the profits within 9 months of its year end to the club, which is a CASC or a charity, and those profits will be absolutely free of corporation tax. So obviously you need to use the the donation when you get it in the club for rugby purposes. But I shouldn't think there are any rugby clubs in England that don't use the funds they generate for their sport. So that's company gift aid for you. It is quite different to individual gift aid. And I'm just trying to click on. Yes. So I'm going now back to individual gift aid and to talk about the process of claiming. This may be it may put off, sorry, a number of clubs because they think, oh, there's so much paperwork involved. I need all the time to do it. And it is true that gift aid doesn't fall off a tree like fruit. There is some work involved. And the first element of this process is that you must have a gift aid declaration from your donor. That is required because the donor has to certify to you that he or she has paid sufficient tax to recover the 25% that you're recovering. And it contains some other details which enable you to complete the claiming process. And it puts an important point, perhaps in the current environment, it puts the donor on notice that if he or she doesn't have sufficient tax to cover your repayment, then he or she will be responsible for repairing the revenue for the amount of tax that they've overpaid to the club. But that's not proven to be a problem, I think, that I've come across extensively in my dealing with registered sports clubs. So the other aspect is, well, how often do I have to claim? Is there as there is for perhaps filing tax returns, a time limit? You've got to do it by a certain date. You've got to do it every month or every week or every year or every 5 years. Well, you do it at your leisure. You decide when you want to put your gift aid claims into HMRC. And obviously you don't want to leave it too long because you might get out of time. But if you have been registered a number of years and you've had donations and never claimed gift aid on them, I would suggest that you should go back and you look at the donations you've received to see whether you can get those GADs, those gift aid declarations, and then make a claim now, because you can go back a certain period of time. This next picture on Charities Online filled me with dread when I initially was faced with doing some gift aid claims for a charity that I was a chairman of. And in fact, that was unwarranted because the Charities Online process, which I imagine most of the 51% that are claiming have used, is very easy to use. You register, you then can file your gift aid claims electronically, and there's a spreadsheet that they provide you with where you can fill in the details of individual donations to make that claim. And it is very efficient. In fact, much more efficient than the hard copy alternative, which can take a lot longer to process. The system is that HMRC repays you now, but checks later. So many times I've had clubs call me and talk to me and say, well, our claim must have been all right because we got repaid within 2 weeks or a week or whatever. And to them I say, well, okay, that's fine, but HMRC do carry out gift aid audits. Not every year, but periodically on a risk assessment basis, they will visit clubs and ask for all sorts of information. So you must have the audit trail to support that claim. So some ideas as to how you might use gift aid, and it would be interesting to see what the 51% who are claiming it are using, whether they're using any of these. I don't pretend that these are this list is exhaustive. They're just things that I've come across or used. The first one I think is almost a no-brainer, and that is in respect of volunteer expenses. If as a volunteer chairman or treasurer you incur costs, maybe telephone bills, travel costs, mileage costs, doing your voluntary work on behalf of the club, and you don't charge them to the club, that money is lost. It doesn't qualify for gift aid and it's never recorded in the books. And Because in order for gift aid to be available, you need to make a payment, and therefore, if you a gift of expenses is not a payment to the club, sorry, the registered club, so it doesn't qualify. So this little piece of planning, which the Revenue have published in guidance, indicates that if you reimburse your volunteers for their bona fide expenses, you can then invite them to make a gift back of the money they've received and claim gift aid on it. Very simple. Look at the RFU website. You will see a step-by-step guide to that. For those that haven't used gift aid, I'm sure they've contributed to charity, because charities for years have been using sponsored events such as bike rides, walks, swimathons, etc. to raise money. Straightforward, someone does a walk or a bike ride and it gets his friends, his mates to sponsor him or her, and that sponsorship, subject to the normal rules about declarations, etc., will qualify for gift aid. And typically in the past, and I suspect in the future when it starts again, clubs, registered clubs, charities, CASC have used online platforms such as Virgin Money Giving to carry out that, but you don't have to. You can do it on a paper-based form. Patrons of a building fund. You're raising money for new changing rooms or new clubhouse or whatever. You can invite members and friends and supporters to make a gift to you, perhaps a suggested amount, but not mandatory, voluntary. And then you can call them a patron, put their name on a board when the facility is built, and that can qualify for gift aid. Fairly recently, we've seen a change in the Revenue's attitude to buy a brick, and that's why I've got that up there. They seem to think that buy a brick is buying something, it's not a donation. So if you're looking at buy a brick, do have a word, because there are some wrinkles with that particular piece of planning. The next one I use personally, party celebrations, big birthday or a big anniversary. Rather than get bottles of champagne or flowers or chocolates or whatever, invite your guests to make a payment, a donation to your favorite sports club, which is registered as a CASC or charity. Not only will you get the donation, but if you get gift aid declarations from the donors, you'll be able to enhance those gifts by 25%. Government will pay up. The last item on this list is a recent one that has only reared its, I was going to say ugly head, but it's not particularly ugly. It's reared its head during the pandemic lockdown. There have been many theatres, arts events that have had their events cancelled, their charities, and they've offered refunds. They're bound to offer refunds to the purchasers of the tickets. But what they've said to the purchasers of those tickets, well, can we not repay you? Let us just let us just ask you to treat that as a donation to the charity, the theatre or whatever. Well, the Revenue have confirmed that can equally apply to community amateur sports clubs. It's not confined to charities. So, for example, if you've had an end of season dinner, which you've had to cancel, you've taken the ticket money, you are probably obliged to refund that money. If you haven't refunded it, get in touch with your members, the people that bought the tickets, and say, would you like to treat this as a donation? Sign this gift aid form, and not only will we retain the money that you've paid, but we'll get 25% on top. And this is a concession from the normal rule that you do have to make a separate payment, separate donation, because effectively when you bought the tickets it wasn't a donation, but the Revenue are saying, well, we'll treat it as a donation. Very often I put that warning at the bottom. It's useful to take professional advice on some of these, perhaps some of the wackier fundraising initiatives. That's not a complete list there, but it's a pretty good start for 10. So I think we're moving on to the next poll here, Alex. Yes.
Yeah, I've just launched that poll now. So it's sort of come up already in the chat. So can CASCs get gift aid on membership subscriptions? Yes, no, or don't know. So I've launched that now. It should be with you and stuff. I'm going to gather those results. Gather those results. Okay, so I'm just going to publish those. But yes, 84% said no, and sort of nearly 16% said I don't know. So I've just published those results. Those will be with you now. Richard?
Thanks very much, Alex. Obviously, people were listening, so that's great. You are, in fact, that full marks to the 84%. Probably the 16% don't know because I haven't looked at gift aid. So this slide answers that particular question. It's written into the law, and despite protestations from people like Dave and myself at the very beginning of this scheme, the government and the revenue and the treasury have refused to make membership subscriptions eligible for gift aid. And indeed, I think by their approach, they've created confusion, because subscriptions are eligible for gift aid in other sectors for charities. However, I won't go on about that. But it's created confusion to the extent that HMRC was so concerned about erroneous claims in respect of subscriptions that they sent a letter out last July to about 300 sports clubs. Undoubtedly, I know some rugby clubs received that letter. And basically, it gives that message that CASC are not eligible. Charities are not generally eligible, but may be eligible on a separate annual subscription, which gives nothing else but joining the club. But take great care. That's letters in the resource, so you can have a look at it at your leisure. One area where there has been some flexibility, shall I say, although I'm not sure whether it's real, is during the pandemic lockdown, there is potential for gift aid to be claimed if the club decides, the registered club decides, that their membership fees should be reduced or suspended. Now, this may not apply extensively in rugby, but for example, if you were collecting your membership fees in 12 installments during the year and you're locked down effectively from 1st of April or even earlier, then you can invite your members to continue paying, provided you make it clear they don't have to continue to pay, and invite the members to continue paying and ask them to sign a gift aid declaration and claim gift aid on the subscriptions which they don't have to pay because they've been reduced or suspended. So that may be worth looking at for some. I don't know, but in this general area of membership subscriptions, do take care. I think we're coming on. Oh, sorry. Yes, we're coming on to another poll, Alex.
Yep, so I've launched that now. A nice old acronym. Who knows what GADS is? Yes, no, not a clue, unsure. Let us know and stuff. GADS. Anybody used it? I'll gather those results now. Okay, 25% have, 62% haven't, and sort of 13% are unsure. Richard?
That is excellent, Alex. It was the result I was expecting. I think if you probably asked the population of qualified accountants, they would probably provide a similar result for you. GADS is not a disease. It's the Gift Aid Small Donation Scheme. It was introduced in April 2013 and unfortunately has not met the government's expectations for it, because the government have said that they haven't paid enough money out under this scheme. It's been insufficient. I don't think they promoted it very well. But let me just tell you what it is that probably better known as a sort of a bucket collection scheme. It means that if you're a registered club and you collect cash donations, then you can claim 25% from the revenue of those cash donations back as a sort of a grant. And so therefore, if I gave a registered club £10, HMRC would pay the club £2.50. No, very simple scheme. there is a limit on the amount of repayment that you can get under CADS, and that is £2,000 a year. That is the maximum claim, and it represents total cash donations of £8,000, as you can see on the slide. Hell of a lot of money. You'll do well to collect 8,000 in cash donations, particularly in the current environment. I should add that contactless card payments also qualify, and that's worth bearing in mind. And the reason that it was introduced was that it's a much, much simpler scheme. It doesn't require a gift aid declaration at all. And in fact, the donor is effectively untraceable because they're putting money in a jar or whatever. And they don't have to be taxpayers. So two big pluses. Limited amount that you can receive under the scheme, but nevertheless worthwhile looking at, I would suggest. But what are the conditions for claiming? They're not really terribly trying. The donation must be for £30 or less. So if you're given a £50 note, you know it doesn't qualify, and you can't pretend it's two donations of £25. You have to be honest about this. Surprise, surprise, membership fees don't qualify. You must be claiming gift aid proper. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it means that you must be in the gift aid system, and in order to claim £100 of small donations, you must have claimed gift aid proper on £10 of donations. So there's a multiple of 10 there. Not terribly difficult, but you do have to be in the gift aid scheme. And there are other conditions, not terribly difficult. There are sort of conditions that you would adhere to anyway. There must be an audit trail. You must bank the cash. You must put the date on the that you made the collection. And generally, if the revenue come in, you need to be able to demonstrate that these qualify for the small donation scheme. And claiming couldn't be simpler. You don't have to identify the donors. It's a one-line entry on your gift aid claim when you're making your gift aid claim. Very, very simple. And the revenue, repay it with the gift aid, and within a very short period of time, that 6 or 7 days. So how might we use it? Well, the first two of these I've used myself. So collections at a bar. I mean, I know the bars are not open at the moment, but you can have a bucket or a jar or some sort of collecting receptacle on the bar, so that when someone buys the drinks, you know, they've got £2 change out of 10, they can just pop the £2 in the tin or the jar. At a ticket events which didn't include perhaps coffee and tea, it might just be I don't know, a buffet together with some sort of entertainment. You can have a tin or a bucket next to the refreshments. Coffee and tea free, but we suggest you make a £1, £2, whatever it is, donation. Don't have to make it, but if people do, you've got a nice little collection then that you can bank and get 25% in addition. Or cash donations at events. I'm sure probably not rugby style to go around with a begging bucket, but you know, in these difficult times, you might decide to go around and do that to collect some money for a new junior program. I leave that to you, but you know, this works, but not enough people are using it. So I've sort of come to the end of the slides I want to do. I just wanted to sort of give you a brief summary of what I think you should do now. I mean, obviously, if you're not registered, have a look at registration. But if you are registered, fundraise using gift aid and GADS to get free money from HMRC. Never needed it more. It's there. Maybe the events that you can do or the fundraising you can do is more restricted, but please use it. It's really worthwhile. I think we've already all seen enough of grant applications to last us a lifetime. You don't need to make any grant application to get this money back. You just need to have the processes in place, get people to give you money, and then go through the process of claiming, which is quite efficient. And if you do it online, it's very quick. And possibly one of the most important points of the whole evening, HMRC and the government are really behind this. That's why they did the Sport Relief press release. And whilst they will be fair in challenging it, they really do want sports clubs, which are registered as CASC or charity, to take advantage of both gift aid and GADs, and the opportunities are there. And I would say this, wouldn't I? But do take professional advice if you need it. Some of the things that you might be thinking of doing might be a little complicated, so make sure that you get it straight beforehand. Maybe you need to clear it before the revenue, but if you're comfortable with what you're doing, you need not fear that gift aid audit. So that's really what I ought to say. And now to see, Alex, perhaps you could ask.
Yeah, Richard, just one thing that has come through on the chat. How many years can you go back to claim gift aid? Can you just clarify on that?
Yeah, it's a 4 years, broadly 4 years.
Okay, broadly 4 years. So this is the last poll of the evening as we come to an end. I've just launched that now. That'll be with you. So how confident are you feeling, to claim gift aid? We saw some on there that said, we thought about it, but and they wanted to, but they weren't totally sure of what they could claim on. So how confident are you that you'll be able to claim gift aid in the future? You're very confident, or not at all? I'm just going to gather those results now. Okay, and I'm pleased to say that, 54% are very confident and 44% are confident. So, we should be able to go away and put some claims in and get some well-needed cash back into our clubs. So just to finalise and finish, I'm going to pass over to Dave Stubley just to finish off the webinar.
Right, well, thank you all for tuning in this evening. And my special thanks to Richard and for Alex for organising this. Don't forget that you will get a recording of this afterwards, and there's been some great questions posed in the chat function this evening. We will endeavour to get the answers to those out. On the slide in front of you at the moment, you can see an email address for Richard. So, after this event, please make use of him, but also please make use of Alex and myself, and we can provide you with information and take you through bits and pieces. So it just leaves me to say have a great evening, stay safe, and we've got a chance to go out and have a clap for the NHS carers at 8 o'clock. Thank you.